Let's blow this up. Look alive, Bomb Squad. We are back for another installment of Let's Blow This Up. I'm your host, Jason Sircone, and tonight we're going to have some fun talking about building a kick-ass, functional podcast studio in your home. Now, you come to me here every week. This is the Bomb Shelter. This is my studio. I love this setup, but I know there are still some things that I can improve upon with this setup, and I have got the quote-unquote best expert in the world to help us break this down tonight. This guy brings years of experience in film, in videography, in photography, you name it. And he lives for helping podcasters stand out on camera and making their studios look badass. So without further ado, I'm going to welcome to the stage none other than Junaid Ahmed. Junaid, welcome to Let's Blow This Up, my friend.
Jason, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I am just as excited to have you on the show. And I did forget to say to the Bomb Squad, of course, if you're watching us live, please drop some comments. We'd love to hear from you. Junaid and I've learned, as we discussed before the show went live tonight, we're both getting our asses kicked by allergies this week. So if at any point one of us or even both of us at the same time goes off camera, it's because we're coughing or sneezing. Just to set the table for what's in store. Hopefully it doesn't make anybody drop off the stream, but nevertheless, we're going to soldier on and we're going to make this a damn good conversation tonight, because I've been looking forward to this one for a while, my friend, ever since we connected and talked about bringing this subject to life. I love the idea of having a very aesthetically pleasing, well set up, well crafted home studio. And I think that sometimes, not always, but in a lot of cases, there are folks that believe that you need to have a studio professionally built, thousands of dollars. That's the only way that you can proceed. I want to eradicate that tonight to some degree, but ultimately I want to pick your brain about what we need to be thinking about as we build out these studios. So to kick off the conversation, I'd love to hear what got you so passionate about this area of the podcast space.
Well, Jason, it goes back to a long, long time ago when I got to purchase my very first camera for $1. This is a film camera back in the 80s, and I was 11 years old, and my uncle was like, hey, if you give me $1, I'll give you a camera. It was a gift exchange kind of thing. I was like, this is pretty fun. So I've been behind a camera for a very, very long time. Now, as my children were born, I was using all different sorts of cameras, capturing videos, capturing photos. And as I am getting more professional at it, my wife gets me a DSLR camera for our wedding anniversary in 2013. And I was like, oh my God, this is the real deal, right? It was something similar to this, right? It's got the handle, it's got the removable lenses and everything. And I'm like, okay, I got to learn everything about it. So I took 15, 20 different courses, Hollywood Camera Works, Foundation of Photography, like you name it. It talked about how to use these cameras. And as I'm going through these courses, it's teaching me, oh my God, I could use these principles on literally any camera at all. So that got me even more excited. Now, in 2018, I finally got back into podcasting after listening to an advice from Gary Vee. He's like, hey, just document your journey. If you don't know how to tell a story, that's totally fine. Just document what you're doing. And it just so happened I was becoming a beekeeper. So I'm like, this would be a fun thing to document. So as I'm documenting my beekeeping journey, recording this podcast in my car on my smartphone, I get to practice what I'm talking about and how I'm conveying that message. And it helped me get a little bit better, but I still wasn't out of the park yet. So it all came down to the pandemic, when we're all sitting in front of cameras, we're all sitting in meetings and Zooms and whatnot. Now, by that time, I had already been podcasting for about 3 years, and I had done some video podcasting, but I was still publishing audio. But as I looked at myself more and more on camera. I was like, okay, I got to get this dialed in. And of course, we see, as podcasters know, we saw Pat Flynn do these live streams every single day on YouTube, and the studio looked clean.
Mhm.
And he finally like published a blog post that talked about, hey, here's all the stuff in my studio. And as I'm reading this list, I'm like, wait, I have all this gear that he's talking about over there, and he's using it with his computer. So I dug in and I, did some more research. And of course, lo and behold, started setting up my space, and people started asking me, how in the world
Mhm.
in Zoom, we're all using Zoom, why does your video look so clean? And of course, you have to tell them, well, I'm using this camera and this light and this microphone. So that's how I got into it. And I just absolutely love it. Now, my background, being a tech enthusiast, been designing for web for 20 plus years, web, mobile apps, enterprise. So I was already asking people a question, how it can solve their problems.
Yeah.
And now, marry that with the technology of photography and filmmaking and being in front of a camera. So all of the things that I've been building on comes together with this, me helping people with studios.
That's a tremendous story. And again, I think of how far we've come because it's come up a lot on this season. Many of us got our start no video whatsoever. It was all
Mm-hmm.
about just the audio platform.
Yeah.
Maybe at some point a Skype call might take place or eCam, and we were doing what we could to capture the best audio possible.
Yeah.
But on a grand scale, it was more so just let's sit down with somebody in person and capture good audio, and that's going to be our podcast. And absolutely nothing wrong with that if you're still
Yeah.
going that direction. But
Mm-hmm.
the pandemic normalized this type of connection.
It did.
You are where you are, I am where I am, and it doesn't matter what those two geographic points are. We can still connect and have this great conversation. And at the same time, we've got this great background. And I remember vividly Zoom apparently had been around for a couple years
It
before
has been around
the
for a while.
pandemic, and again, just wasn't something we thought about. But I
Yeah.
remember how cool I thought it was to be able to put up those virtual backgrounds. And I was like, oh my God, like I had, like when we were doing calls with just our friends to stay connected, I had like the
Yeah.
Seinfeld set, I had the Friends coffee shop, I had
Yeah.
like just from all over the place. And then it just started to get old. So when I started moving, I felt like I was in the Matrix. And you still see that when people use that blurred background, it feels
Yes.
like very trippy. Now, when I went towards this show and even into more knowing that my podcast is going to be a video format as well, I was very intentional about how I set things up. And I wanted to have that aesthetic appeal with a little bit of personality. I've still had people say I need to replace the microphone with a big bomb for Bombtrack, blow this up. And they're probably not wrong. But overall, do you feel, and maybe this is something that you've experienced as you've talked to people, but podcasters coming into this, is their studio setup something that they're thinking about on the front end, or are they more dialed into what they want their content to be all about? And should those two be married together at the very beginning?
I think the first thing they should be focusing on is what's the message behind what they're sharing on the podcast, right? And once you have that dial in, what that does for anybody is you're now attracting the kind of people that want to listen to that message, to that story. And then gradually you can bring in higher end gear and higher end setups.
Yeah.
And when you do that, people not only see the growth, they also see, hey, you're improving not only the way that you talk to people and the way you ask questions, but also you're putting in the professionalism of adding gear to the stuff. Now, if you look at Joe Rogan's set, that hasn't really changed over the years,
right?
But we've seen the growth in him over the years.
Yeah.
Diary of a CEO, you probably heard that he declined $100 million offer. Stephen Bartlett, he started his podcast in a space where it's more dedicated, and he was able to do that because, well, he has the money, and he's like, hey, how can I do pro style, bring people in person? He's not doing remote conversation like we are. He's like, how can I bring a level of uh, professionalism and curiosity for the audience, a way that nobody else has brought. Now, again, it all comes down to which level you're at to be able to do that kind of investment.
Yeah, and that's where I don't want. I mean, I think that's across the board with
Mm-hmm.
technology, equipment, studio setup. It should never be what stops you from starting your podcast.
100%.
In a lot of ways, there is a lot to be said for look at how far I've come. I started in my closet, surrounded by my clothes, and
Yes.
that allowed me to capture the best audio, but that's not going to be the best for video.
Yeah.
But now I have gotten my craft honed. I'm doing a much better job. I'm more engaged in the process.
Mm-hmm.
Now I can take that step forward. Maybe I am generating a little bit of income from my show, or I want to make it so I can get to that level. Therefore, I'll put a little bit more thought into how I set up
Yeah.
my studio and how things look behind me, and making sure. I mean, I think sound should be the first thing you're thinking of.
Sound is the number one thing,
right?
you wanna
Like
focus on,
no
yeah.
cement floors, no cement, no brick, like things that will really impact what your product sounds like. And we're going to get to all of that in our conversation tonight. But I feel that showing the steps of that I started here, this is what I was focused on. It allowed me to take the next step and the next step. That's inspiring and can make
Yeah.
a lot of people that are thinking about podcasting, but thinking they have to start on this high level, might make them think a little bit differently.
Absolutely, and that's why I wrote the book, 7 Stages of Home Studio Evolution, which talks you through, hey, no matter which stage you are in, do the work so that it feels more natural to add gear to your space. For example, when I started biking, I was just riding a mountain bike with road tires, and I know how heavy that bike was. And I was like, whoa, this is heavy. But then as I got better at it, I was like, okay, now I can go and invest in a better bike so I can ride on the road much more efficiently.
I'm still here with you, my friend. I knew that was going to happen eventually. No, you're right, though. And that's the thing. I think when we first are cutting our teeth, there is no real need for the most expensive equipment. In a lot of ways, you may discover this isn't for you. And there's no shame in that. You may find something else that you want to do instead. But if you've invested thousands of dollars into it, for one, you're, hey, man, that was a waste of money. Or you may think that you have to stay committed because you made that big investment. And now it becomes more of a chore than it does something you're going to have fun with. And that will never work out. That will inevitably crash and burn in a very short period of time.
And then podcasting is a totally different animal compared to, let's say, YouTube show or, short films and whatnot. And there's a place for everything. And what's funny is that even now in 2025, companies are still figuring out the best way to promote it. For example, there's a recent publication out where they talked about how if you start posting video on your Spotify, it's going to basically delete the previous status of you that you had with the audio, because Spotify is not pushing it as an RSS feed to other platforms because that's still being, figured out. I mean, Spotify's only has had this experience for maybe 7 years, right? Not that long, that long. So again, it all comes down to what's the purpose, what's the message that you're sharing, and who's the audience. It doesn't have to be 1,000, 100,000 people. As long as you're getting that message to the 100 people, and they're going to listen to everything you're saying, you're in a good place.
Let's talk about that YouTube dynamic, because as we're learning as we go, there is a lot of mass appeal for podcasting on YouTube these days. And there are some people that are just using the audio of that, where they can feed it through their RSS. Some are just putting an audio base with a photo and it comes across as a video. I am doing both. I have the RSS feed pushing an audio version to YouTube, and then I have the actual video. Like this live stream is there now, but every episode I'm also posting the video to go along with it. So it's the best of both worlds. But in that respect, do you think because we are starting to shift. And again, like, not this won't be everybody, but to some degree, there is more of a need for that nice looking studio type of setup because of YouTube. Do you think that's what's factoring in? Do you think that we are looking at how the aesthetics of our show play into how we attract people because YouTube has such a strong role in discovery? Or do you think
Mhm.
there's other factors in play we should be thinking about?
Yeah, so those are really excellent points because yes, YouTube has the largest distribution compared to other platforms. Right?
Right.
It's all about the distribution number. Uh, the monthly active users on YouTube is 2.5 billion.
Crazy.
What's the number for Apple Podcasts? What's the number for Spotify? We don't know, right?
Yeah.
So based on that number alone, your podcast is going to get more listens to on YouTube as opposed to the other platforms. Now that doesn't discount the fact that you shouldn't have it on both places. You kind of should, because if you're calling it a podcast, it it relates back to the original name of the iPod. It's a podcast, or it's a cast
Mm-hmm.
designed to be downloaded and listened to later.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for if you want to show up the best way possible and attract the right audience, even newer audience, then getting a good enough setup, good enough audio for YouTube video, I think is the best way to attract the right kind of audience for you.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. You bring up a very interesting point, and this is something I've said before. I almost feel like podcast, just the term alone, is a bit broken.
Mm-hmm.
Not the format, but the
Yeah.
term, because we think iPod, that was where
Mm-hmm.
it was born.
Yeah,
Who uses an iPod anymore?
exactly. We just use Apple Music now, right? They even got rid of
Exactly.
the thing.
Yeah. I know my iPad or my iPod shit the bed. Gosh, I can't remember, like 15 years ago or
Mm-hmm.
something like that. It just one day I
Yeah.
turned it on and it just went done.
Nope.
And by
Nope.
then I was already on the iPhone, so
Yeah.
well, okay, I'll just use this now. And
Yeah.
here we are. So yeah, that's the thing. I got to ask my daughter, what's an iPod? I don't know
Mm-hmm.
what an iPod is.
What's an
So
iPod?
exactly. So when you say podcast, again, I think we have adopted it as such a strong term in our
Yeah.
vernacular. I can't see it going away, but it is absolutely evolved beyond that original definition, which is why when I look at it, it excites me. I like the
Mm-hmm.
fact that we're incorporating video into this. We're
Yeah.
taking it to another level. We're allowing consumers to choose how they consume our product, whether
Exactly.
it's audio, video, or even if we transcribe it, put it in the form of a blog post. They're able to learn about this content that we're
Mm-hmm.
putting on. We're putting it center stage because it's important to us.
Yeah.
They can now choose how they take that in and best absorb what we have to say.
100%. And the other thing, the difference that I've seen in podcast versus a YouTube show is the showing of the microphone, right? This is a audio first platform, audio
Mhm.
first messaging tool. So you have the microphone in the shots, and that's
Right.
what calls it a podcast. Versus you'll see a lot of shows on YouTube, they don't have a microphone in the shot.
It's
They
very
have
true.
either a wireless microphone or they have a overhead microphone, and it's a
Yeah.
YouTube video designed for the television. So this alone differentiates on what's a podcast and what's a YouTube show.
That's a very interesting point. I never thought about it like that. Now that'll be the first thing I see whenever I'm watching these shows. Do they have a microphone present or do they
Yes.
not?
Mm-hmm.
And my friend Matt Shields, him and Megan run Chime House Media, and they have said how there's something about the microphone being in front of a person that adds a new layer of intelligence to the points they're
Yes.
making.
Yes,
And
it does.
I know that they specialize in ads, and they've said the ads that have a person's talking head with a microphone perform better.
Wow.
Crazy, but I mean, I think it's just that it's that perception that we have of a person on a podcast has a certain level of intelligence about a certain subject. That's why they're
Mm-hmm.
there. Whether it's their show or they're being invited as a guest, they have a certain level of
Yeah.
information that we need to hear, and the microphone is completely exemplary of that. So yeah, I can see how that
That's beautiful.
plays in our mind, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's another level of authority, because when you see speakers on stage, they either have a microphone or they it's almost like when we watch the news, we see the person of the government speaking. They have mics in front of them, right? So they
Mhm.
have it's kind of like a figure of authority as well.
Yeah, that's very true. And it's ironic enough that I've said so many times we're praising the microphone on the screen, but I can't stand when I see it on a podcast cover anymore. I just feel like that's been that and sound waves
It's
on podcast covers
overplayed.
has been beat. Yeah,
Yes.
it's been beaten to
Yes.
death. So
Yeah. Because it's so generic and so general, it doesn't really attract anything anymore.
right,
Yes, it's a podcast. We understand we're over that hump already, where you
yeah,
don't have to explain what a podcast is,
yeah.
but be more creative, guys. Come on.
Well, I think it was, that was that. Well, I have a podcast. I should have a microphone. It actually now has the opposite effect. It doesn't make you stand out. It makes you
Mhm.
blend in.
Yeah.
And if you're
It does.
blending in, you're going to get lost because there's just so many shows to choose from. So
100%.
it's definitely
100%.
smart things to think about. So shifting to the studio, and again, not breaking the bank. First of all, I have to ask you, I just saw this post today in your community. What are your thoughts on ring lights?
Yeah, delete them, get rid of them, throw them out.
What's the logic there?
So the ring lights was a uh, a a product that was created to capture fun kind of photography, right?
Mhm.
Gives you that ring effect. It's designed for portrait photography, right? Photography alone is what it's focused on. So when we're using a ring light with video, guess how far that ring light is sitting from them? It's sitting about 5 feet, 3 feet away from them, and it doesn't really look that well. You're not well lit. If you want the right effect, it needs to be right here, right?
Yeah,
Right next to the camera. And then you have those ring lights, and what it does, it not only does it cast a weird shadow or reflection in your eye, but it also hurts your eyes because you can
interesting.
only go so far. Now, the way I have my lights set up, they are out of my peripheral view. Like I can still see them, but
Mhm.
they're not right in front of me, so I can be here for a lot longer time.
Yeah. I used a ring light for a while, but I don't think I use it in the traditional sense. I mean, I know there are people that put them right on their desk and they have it pointed right at them, and you can see it in their eyes, or
Hmm.
if they wear glasses, forget it.
Yeah.
You're getting the ultimate reflection there. But I made the switch to LED lights when I can't remember when it was at some point this year. When I leveled up a little bit here in my
Hmm.
studio, and that was the best move I could have made. I
Yes.
knew I needed something a little bit better that ended up, and they're adjustable so I could up the brightness, but I found the perfect level. And then when I got the new computer with the new camera, with the
Game changer.
studio light built in, like the studio light feature built into it, like I don't know how it'll show on the screen. Yeah, you can see how that
Hmm.
switches it, and then you can turn it in
Yeah,
and
it's
out of portrait.
basically dims that background light because
Yeah,
the focus should be on the talent. Who's the
right.
talent in the shot, right? We are the talent. So you want to make sure that you're lit up properly and people can see you and hear you.
Exactly. And that's where, again, I stress these points. I think it's great to think about you, but you can still do it in an economical way.
Yes.
So getting started without making some of the mistakes, it could put you in a better spot, and you're still not going to spend a ton of money. And
100%.
it's going to set you up for more success because right out of the gate, you're producing a better product aesthetically. And if you're, of course, going with a good microphone, you're going to sound better
Yeah.
too. So a lot of advantages there. So Junaid, walk us down the path. Let's start with the mistakes. Let's start with where you've seen people making mistakes as they set up their studio. What do our listeners in the Bob Squad and viewers in the Bob Squad need to be aware of so they don't make the same mistakes?
So the first thing that you want to avoid is having any windows in behind you,
Mm-hmm.
right? Lighting up that camera because it's going to create a silhouette kind of effect, and you're probably wondering like, hey, what's going on with the lighting? Because well, the camera's trying to focus or trying to close down its aperture because it's getting too much light from the window. So you
Right.
can use that window with an advantage by just flipping the setup by
Mm-hmm.
putting the camera in front of the window and sitting in front of the window and utilizing that beautiful light that you're getting. So number one, make sure you get rid of those lights from your shots. Number two, get a good microphone. Doesn't cost a lot,
Mhm.
and it makes sure that your audio is listening. I mean, we are auditory human beings. People say I'm a visual person. Well, I'm an auditory person. If I can't hear somebody talk, I don't know what they're saying, right?
Yeah.
And same thing with AI and all the technology that we're using. It wants good, clean audio so that it can transcribe that to text properly. So,
Mhm.
good microphone, avoid those lighting. Number three is, if you have a webcam, but if you have a smartphone, which has an even better camera lens, use that camera for your setup.
Yeah, that's a very
So
good.
much easier. Like
Yeah.
I can probably do a demo right on this as I'm holding my camera in front of me. Nope. Of course, it doesn't want to show me right now, but it's okay. We'll
Yeah, I
play with
know
it
now
later.
whenever I jump onto anything with a video, I get the prompt if I want to use my iPhone as the
Yeah.
webcam. Here's what I
Yes.
need to do to set that up. I
Yeah.
honestly haven't done it because the camera in this new computer is so sweet.
It's
I was like,
really sweet, yeah, and
right?
then you have
Yeah.
the right lighting, so
Yeah.
when you have the right lighting and you have the right camera, everything just looks clean because the lighting is the key.
Yeah.
I'm gonna switch to my webcam over here,
All right.
and again, right, because I have the lighting dialed in here, it looks not too bad. But of course, we're
Mhm.
now so used to this higher end look of Junaid. Like, what happened to your camera?
Well, and either way, I mean, I think there's a lot of. I mean, even it wasn't even intentional. I think of the computer I was using even at the beginning of this season before I
Mhm.
upgraded. It was an older computer, and I
Yeah.
did not have a separate webcam.
Yeah.
It didn't look as good. It looked fine, but there is a vivid difference,
Mhm. Yeah.
and that's where I feel I probably could have made the investment in a separate webcam and been
Mhm.
in a better spot. But either way, we're here now, and
Yes,
look how
absolutely.
far I've come to speak to what we said before.
Amen. Amen.
So I think some of the common mistakes that we to piggyback on what you were saying before, things that I've seen or even experienced in being as a guest or a producer on shows. I know the biggest one, to speak to your point. That's why I was smiling when you were talking about
Mhm.
the windows behind. I'll tell you, I did a podcast for a client and his guest had that. It was like watching an angel the whole time,
Mhm.
and the sun was out. It was brutal, just brutal. So that was one, but there's all with cement floors and bricks and things that like where you
Yep.
just you don't have that sound absorption. You're getting the echo. Those
Mhm.
are some very easy things to avoid. So you don't want to
Yeah.
like I know that I used to have my studio in my basement, and I had to do a lot of treatment with
Mhm.
carpeting and the foam panels on the wall.
Yeah.
And the only reason I moved it to a spare bedroom was the fact that it was warmer up here.
Mhm.
So I felt, in the wintertime, it was getting real hard to
Yeah.
podcast for a long period
N
of time because I was freezing my ass
100%.
off. And the space heater could only do so much. So we got a question from Mr. Michael LeBlanc for you, Junaid. What camera are you using?
So I'm using a full frame camera by Canon with a 35 millimeter f1.8 lens. And that's what creates a bokeh as the function of physics.
I love, and I've seen multiple videos with your setup, that background with the lighting. Talk to me more about that because that's something that I'm still trying to get dialed in with how to set up the lighting. I have,
Hmm.
you can probably see it running along the back of me here, the
Yep, I
light.
see that. Hmm.
So I would still like to add a little bit more.
Yeah.
So talk to me like you've got that beautiful purple, red.
Hmm.
That looks so good. How do I accomplish something like that?
So the one thing that I'm doing that not most people are doing is, and you probably also, if you were to reach back out, can you touch the wall?
I cannot.
Okay, so
Should I
how?
be able to?
No, you shouldn't be, because
Okay.
my wall back here is about 8 feet away.
Okay.
So because it's so far away, it compresses the entire background, and you see a lot more of that background. And so I'm also able to put lights separately further away, pointing down at the background. So if I were to showcase what the different types of lights I put in there, so because it's a bookshelf, I was able to do those lights around the shelf. So I'll turn off the red ones, and then you see that. And then if I turn off the blue one, and then I just have the bookshelf lit up with the lights that I have.
Okay.
And then if I were to turn off my key light, I just have the two lights up here. My fill light, which was going to be this one, is it basically much brighter, so it fills in a lot more. And then my hair light, which is again lighting my hair so that I have a separation from the background. If I were to switch to my rear camera, you can see my back is well lit, and then this light I cannot control right now to turn off. But that's the kind of setup I have going on in here, so that everything just comes together. What I like to call it is I'm painting with light. So start with a completely dark room, and then start bringing in one light, two light, color, and then dial in all those things.
I have to say, when you had the lights on the shelf turned off, so it was a more black and white type of effect, it blended perfectly with your hair and your beard. It was the perfect aesthetic. I mean that in a very complimentary way. I'm not sorry.
Yeah, because it's the same color,
right?
It's like, oh, black and white.
Yes.
Black and white.
So you got the hair, the gray, and then you got the shirt really pops with the maroon red.
Yeah,
beautiful. Well, you're a pro at this.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So I'm going to venture a little off path, because I know we want to talk about this a little bit more, but we'll come back to the studio as we continue this conversation.
100%.
Talk about the GoBox, because that, my friend, is one of the coolest setups. Bomb Squad needs to hear about this.
All right, so the GoBox Studio was actually a request from one of our clients almost 4 years ago. So one of my partner companies, they do post-production of video content. And so you give them video content. We put out 40 to 100 pieces of content from those videos. And then, same thing Gary Vee's been talking about since 2018. So we were doing that, and this client comes in and he's like, hey, I love the video content that I'm creating when I'm at home, because I have a better camera and I can record good. But anytime I'm traveling, I've got this webcam on my laptop that I cannot stand. Can you do something? So my partner goes in, he goes to demo mode. He's like, okay, let me see what I can create. So he creates this Pelican case with the camera, lights, built-in computer, and all that stuff. And then he sends it to them. And he's like, all right, this is beautiful. It's doing exactly what I want. High quality video, no matter where I go. He could travel and record, high quality content. And he posts that video, that photo, on his social media. Now he already had a pretty good following. And as he posts that video or photo, I believe, it had a ton of views. And then he comes back to my partner and it's like, hey, you need to create this into a product and actually sell it. So 10 iterations later, we introduced this product to the market in September of 2022 at Traffic and Conversion, and we sold 17 right out the gate. And people were like just blown away by how powerful this thing is. Now, it's been 3 years since we've had this product in the market. We sold over 100 of these, and we're actually launching a Kickstarter campaign for version 2, where it's completely customizable because a lot of people said, hey, I already have a camera, I already have lights, I already have microphones. Can I just buy your box and put my stuff in it? So this next version that's come in, we're putting a Kickstarter campaign. We haven't even talked about it to anybody yet, but you're getting a sneak peek. But it's going to give you the capability to completely customize it so that you can bring in all the stuff that you want to put in there.
Wow, that's a game changer. I will say, and I might be jumping the gun. I hope I'm not. Maybe I have to go back and edit this later. Empowered Podcasting Conference is in planning. We talked about this a lot on season 2, and it's coming back, and it's going to be bigger and better than ever. And Junaid, I know you played a big part in in that conference. You had the GoBox there. That's where I first saw it and got to experience it. Thought it was cool as hell. And it might be playing an even bigger role at this year's conference. So
That's right.
if you want that live demo or the opportunity to record with a GoBox, get your ass to the conference. We'll have more
Yes.
information about that in upcoming episodes. But I'll tell you, that was a lot of fun, and that was where you and I first got to meet for the 1st time.
That's right.
And then I got to play with that. And all right, I want to bring up a couple of comments from Michael here, who's joined us live. I don't know what that means. I don't know if that's speaking to your background.
Yeah, I
Junaid,
totally
or
get
my
that.
background.
So when I turn my background off, then I can boost up the saturation and vibrance, and my color will pop. But because that color is bringing all the stuff, I've got good clean color. But
yeah, it works both ways.
It works both ways, yeah.
And he's also asking for the link to the GoBox, and that's a great thing to share.
100%. To learn more about the GoBox, just head on over to GoBoxStudio.com.
GoBoxStudio.com. We will put that in the show notes. So, I will say, for a beginning podcast, do you think that type of setup, I mean, again, like what you've solved, the problem you put together was a one-stop shop that can be packed up. It's very portable. It's got everything somebody needs. Do you think it benefits a newer podcaster to invest in something like that, or is this something that I have more experience now? I know this is more of a better investment. How would you say to a new podcaster, yeah, this is what you need?
So depending on what price range this product is, right? A new podcaster might be like, oh my God, this is too expensive. Maybe in 5 years I'll be able to afford it. Right. It does sell at 10K. So
Yeah.
because of that, they might be like, okay, maybe not. But there were some new podcasters. They're like, hey, I want to test out podcasting and I need a good way to get started. I have the money to spend. So they bought the GoBox Studio. They tested out, hey, do I want to do podcasting as a host? And they're like, you know what? Not really. It's not working for me. And that's something that they could buy, use, and then use it. Still continue to use it for other guest appearances that they're doing. So again, it all comes down to which level of investment are you looking to do. For example, another client of mine, she's like, hey, I'm going to be starting the podcasting and I'm going to be moving around. What do I need? It's like, well, you can buy all of this stuff and that would be sitting in your room, or you can buy the GoBox Studio. She's like, I like the portable solution a lot much better because everything's pre-wired in it. So it just makes it a lot more simpler to use.
That's something to think about, especially in today's world. People are on the go. Again, GoBox, perfectly named. If you don't want to have to go to the trouble of packing up all of that equipment and then setting it up, your solution makes that so much more easy.
Much more
Love
easier,
it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So I think Michael's asking about, I would guess, examples of microphones being dynamic or condenser. What are your thoughts on good mics?
So the microphone that I started with, and we all probably did, is the Blue Yeti because they have the biggest marketing dollar anybody else, right? Compared to anybody else. So that's why everybody starts with the Blue Yeti. In fact, if you've seen the show Only Murders in the Building with Steve Martin Short, and Selena Gomez, they start a podcast and they're using a Blue Yeti inside a closet for their first few episodes, right? So
nice.
It's great for a very treated room because it literally catches everything around it. So that's a condenser microphone example. Yeah. Both of us are using dynamic microphones right now.
Right.
The MV7, the Shure SM7B, they are beautiful microphones and they capture. Like I had my son walk in, and my other son was screaming. The others, I don't know if you guys heard it because I'm using this dynamic microphone. Because the further away I am, a lot less sound that you will hear. But if I come closer, a lot more bass, a lot more sounds much better. So that's what I would recommend for anybody starting out with podcasting.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. And it's funny. Mark Ronick and I were just talking about this today. The Blue Yeti in the right environment
Mm-hmm.
can work and it will sound okay. But the unfortunate thing is many podcasters just don't have that type of environment, and therefore it
Mm-hmm.
picks up all of the surrounding sound and it just doesn't make for the best product. So
Yeah.
I think especially starting out, go condenser. That's the way to go for sure. Junaid, I know this is something I think is extremely cool. And I've seen this just from following you on Facebook. You
Mm.
actually travel to places and help with these studio buildups.
Yes.
What is the coolest space you've had the pleasure of putting together for somebody?
Um, Great question. I did the studio for Hala Taha of Young
Ah,
and
Young and
Young and
Profit. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Profit and Podcasting. That was a few years ago. That was a really cool setup. She had the perfect room, and she actually had a muralist come and paint a mural in the wall so that it looks. So we had to design around that mural and capture as much as we can of that mural in the shot. And then so we had to like do really fun kind of setup. So she sits a little higher off the ground. So we had her handyman built out a floating shelf with a floating stage, rather, with wheels on it, so you can move it around and line it up. So that was a really cool setup that I did. I'm
Nice.
also worked on another podcast studio in Connecticut, where her background is actually a massive 80-inch TV, and she could put whatever the heck you want on that TV, and it just blends in because the lighting is focused on you, and because we placed a TV back there, it just blends in just beautifully. And someone in on television that uses a big 85-inch TV for his setup, Kevin O'Leary, is also known for that. So he's I don't know if you've seen his Instagram feed, but anytime he's answering questions, he's got his shirt and tie on, maybe a coat, but then on the bottom he's wearing pajamas and slippers, and
Yeah.
he's sitting in front of that television with his camera, and then it looks like he's in the studio. It's pretty
Yeah.
well done.
That's one of the coolest things. Those flat screen TVs now. I mean, they're. I can't remember the gentleman's name, but I follow him because he's an installer and he
Hmm.
documents these installations.
Nice.
I guess that's just something that all of a sudden I've been following. Didn't even realize I was such a fan of it, but just watching
Yeah.
how they install the TVs, watching how you're building those studios, it's
Hmm.
just so cool to see these things come to life. And
Yeah,
to me, it's just an extension of the creativity that we have in podcasting because
it is.
I've said this across the board, every element of your podcast is a showcase of your creativity and all of the things that you want to express.
Yeah.
Your studio setup should be exactly that. If you're letting that part fall short, that's when it's time to really think about what kind of message do you want to convey from an aesthetic standpoint. And as we've said throughout the night, you don't have to go thousands and thousands of dollars into debt to make that happen,
No, you don't.
but you also want to do something that makes you stand out. So when people see you, they can tell that not only does it look cool, but you're taking it seriously. You're utilizing it as an extension of you and your brand.
100%. Now, one thing that we talked about in the green room was our love for Lego. And I was like, I
Yes.
got to show off this little thing. So I had a guest on my show, and he sent me this gift. And then while he sent it to me, he's like, hey, did you get the mail? Did you get the mail? I was like, well, I'm traveling right now on a studio build, or maybe I was at Social Media Marketing World. He's like, all right, make sure your kids don't open it or something. I'm like, okay, what's in it? So let me line it up real quick right here, and I'll switch to this camera angle. So this is a
Oh,
little Lego studio set that he sent. So my son added the bookshelf on that you see behind here.
yeah.
He put this whole thing again because he loves Lego, but
That's so cool.
he put this thing together. So now I get to look at it. He even added the wood walls and like all of the things. He's like looking over here, like, okay, and then he's like building the whole thing out. Is really fun to watch him.
That is yeah. I love Legos, and that's something that, well, you want to talk about a creative canvas.
Oh my god, yeah.
Seeing what these guys and gals can build out of just nothing but a pile of bricks just blows my mind.
There's a message. There's a group message group that I'm part of. My cycling teammates. A lot of us are Lego fans,
Mhm.
and just somebody recently dropped a video where this guy is, he fixes people's AC units, and the breaker box was in the basement. So as he visits and he's going to the basement, he sees a Lego museum in this guy's basement. Like
Mhm.
every single wall has a bookshelf, and every shelf has a different set from Star Wars to cars, to like literally everything.
So
And he
cool.
asked permission to record a video. So I see this video. I'm like, holy smokes! How many IKEA bills did he have to do? Like,
Yeah.
there's there's at least 50 of these bookshelves that you see behind me in this basement,
Mhm.
and filled with Lego. It was really awesome to see.
Yeah, I take my nephew to the Lego festival that comes to Pittsburgh every year.
Nice.
And the first year we went, there was a guy that it was the ultimate nostalgia bump for me, because we're going around and we're looking at all these amazing builds, and all these people just built stuff from the ground up. And this one guy had all of the stuff that I had when I was a kid. And this is something that me and my dad have talked about. We can't for the life of us figure out where they are in the house, in my parents' house. And we've narrowed it down to two potential spots, but we just haven't dug out everything to really see. But
Hmm.
I was very big into the Space Police sets and
Okay.
the Mtron sets and the
Mm,
Blacktron sets, and I had all of those pieces. And we're
nice.
just kind of wandering around this event looking at all this stuff, and then this one guy had a whole table of nothing but that. And I was just like, oh my God. And it was amazing. I was looking at these things. So I was talking. I was like, yeah, I had that one. I had that one. They all seemed so big when I was a
Mm,
kid.
yeah.
And I'm looking at them here. I'm like, man, those
So
just seem
tiny.
so tiny now. Like, did
Yeah.
I really grow that much? But
Yeah.
it's crazy. But
Mhm.
no, I love that little studio. I think that would be something that I got a couple little Lego guys behind me. I was thinking of
Mhm.
building like an auditorium, or not like a stadium seating, and then just
Looks
lining up
easy.
Lego people as the audience.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
Be
wanted to
so
have
cool.
that in the background and just have it. I mean, I'd like to find all mine, because I know I had over 100 little guys.
Oh, wow. The
And
minifigs. Now, one
yeah.
thing that when you have little kids, I know you have older kids, but my youngest is 2.5 years old, right? So
Mhm.
he's going around taking apart these minifigs and then putting them back together. The other
Yeah.
day, he lined them up on a baseboard, and he turned all of their hair backwards. I'm like, what are they doing? Like, I don't know. It just looks cool.
Well, if there's one thing we learned from the Lego movie, creativity should not stop. So if you've got a
Amen.
story in your mind, you can use Legos to let it play out.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
Well, let's wind down our conversation talking a little bit more about the studio setups. And I think we've covered a lot of ground tonight. But when you encounter somebody that comes to you that says, I'm just getting my start, I'd like to make sure that I'm getting the bare essentials. I want to make sure that everything looks good, sounds good, but I'm not looking to spend thousands of dollars. What's the
Mhm.
advice you typically give on getting the main essentials that someone should have to get started?
So the main essentials shouldn't cost you more than $500, right?
Okay.
That's on the higher end too. Like a set of lights, a good microphone, and your smartphone, and just making sure that you have some way to mount mount your camera
Hmm.
or even your smartphone. That's it. That should get you started as soon as possible. And the beautiful part is you don't even need a computer anymore, because
True.
on your iPhone, even especially the new ones and even in older ones, if you get the USB adapter, you can literally connect these USB microphones directly onto this, right? So
Yeah.
now you can set it up, record your video directly to it, and you got good quality audio, you got good video, you got lighting. Boom, you're on the run. You're on the
Hmm.
way.
I think there's a lot to be said too for just pressing go. Like,
Press and go, press record.
press the record button. You could do that with your phone. If you really wanted to test your chops, get out your voice memo, note,
Yes.
record or app, whatever it's called. Just press the record button and start talking. See how
That's
that goes. It's a good
that's right.
way to test things out.
Mhm. And that's exactly what I did. I My first podcast was back in 2012. We had 2 co-hosts, 2 different time zones, 3 different cities. We didn't have Zoom, so we used Hangouts. We live streamed it YouTube, so then we can grab the audio from it and then editing, So it was a pain.
Yeah.
So we lasted 4 episodes, and I kept asking them, "Let's go back. Let's go back and do it," but they weren't really into it. So I was like, "Okay, I want to start this one way, one how, anyways." And so I listened to Gary Vee's advice. I had all these things stacking up, and the day that I started recording my first episode was when my friend told me, "You should just talk about Queen Bee." I was like, "Of course." Like, no, Queen Bee like Beyonce on the podcast. I had no clue. So I jumped in the car. We had app like Anchor.fm. I plug in my headset and I start talking, and that was my first episode.
There you go. I think we all have stories like that. I know my very first episode, we had gotten equipment, but we really didn't know what we were doing. So we just got what Amazon recommended, which wasn't great, but it did the job.
Did the job.
I
That's
look
all that
back
matters.
at 10 years of podcasting, it obviously just getting the fire lit is what led to all of this. Because I just needed to get that passion rekindled. And once that happened, we were off to the races. So in the early stages, equipment really didn't matter much. Again, we weren't focused on video at that time. It was all about just getting better at the conversations and creating the content and developing that skill for editing. That was another important factor that, again, I think a lot of, especially people I work with, that's one thing they don't want to do. That's why I'm here. And I'm happy to take that work off their plate. But the ultimate DIY podcaster has to realize, I always say, it's funny, I've always said that you're going to have to learn a few different skill sets: hosting, marketing, editing. Now we can add another one to the list: studio setup. And again, doesn't have to be elaborate, but still, you've got to have a few key pieces in place in order to make things function well.
Yeah, 100%. Thanks, Jason. This was fun.
This was fun. I'm gonna bring Michael on stage one more time here. He has a Q2U, and I think that's a great starter microphone. I often recommend
a really great
that.
starter microphone.
It's real. Again, it works very well. It's USB, and if you were to upgrade sometime down the line, it's not a major upgrade because the Q2U is one of the best.
It's one of the best. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really good. Junaid, again, thank you so much for being here. I know, like I said, I only had to go off screen once for sneezing. You didn't have to at all. So you're the ultimate trooper here. You win, my friend. So we know GoBoxStudio.com is where we need to go to check that out. That will be in the show notes as well. How about your podcast and anywhere else you'd like to send the Bomb Squad for more value from you?
100%. So if you're interested in the book, 7 Stages of Home Studio Evolution, which talks about the different stages, has a list of gear in there as well. Go to homestudiobook.com. And if you want to, it'll take you to also homestudiomastery.com if you want to learn more about how I help folks. I also have a 5-day home studio challenge. If anybody's interested, I can share the link for it. But if you want to connect with me on social, just look up Super Junaid, and you'll find me on all the socials.
Yeah, with a lot of cool action figures that you've been creating through.
Yes. Well,
and you took yours to the next level too.
This was the inspiration, right? This was the inspiration to get started with that. And then, of course, with GPT-4o, image generation, and its capability and understanding the language so well to then create the things is a game changer. Yeah.
Haven't done that yet. I'll wait. I'll get there. We're working on some other things, but ChatGPT has been helping me do those, and it makes life a little bit easier for sure.
It does. Yeah, it does.
So, again, Junaid, thank you so much for your time, for your wisdom. I look forward to connecting with you on the multiple platforms we're connected on, and of course, at Empowered Podcasting in September. We'll be sure to cross paths and break bread there.
Amen.
To all of our Bomb Squad members, thank you very much for dropping in on tonight's live stream. If you're catching the audio replay, just remember we're here every Wednesday at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time on YouTube, Facebook, and my personal LinkedIn page. You can connect to all those platforms or just watch the show live on bombtrackmedia.com/live. Next week, I'll be joined by Emily Page. This is going to be fun because this is Emily's first guest appearance on a podcast.
Ooh, wow.
She's actually a partner in Stories and Strategies. We had Doug Downs on the show to kick off the season. Emily is going to join to tell her story. We're going to talk about growing a successful podcast agency and the role she's been playing at Stories and Strategies to make that happen. So make sure that you bookmark next week's show. Don't miss it. It's going to be a good one. Click the bell on YouTube so you know when we're going live and when all other episodes of Let's Blow This Up go live as well. Please don't be a dick about this. Until our paths cross again here on Let's Blow This Up, for Junaid Ahmed, my name is Jason Sircone, reminding you to stay explosive. We'll see you next week.